the Everyman Radio podcast, bringing you the best alternative talk, music, comedy, and more.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Hi, Brent.
Hello.
Welcome to Everyman Radio.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm quite honored that I follow on Stefan Verstappen's heels. I'm nobody. He's like a somebody.
Well, you've got time, and yeah, you're quite right. The interview we had with Stefan was fantastic. He has a wealth of knowledge, and I really love talking about some of his martial arts. Well, that he has a lot of experience of, as well as all the books he's written. I noticed on Facebook, I think, that you posted a short video on how to get ripped. I know you.
Oh yeah, Phoenix. I do that every morning now. I've been 4 days in a row. I'm very proud of myself.
Okay, so what? His name is Phoenix, is it?
His channel, I think, is Phoenix. His name is Chris Heria, Heria, and he's been doing workout videos on YouTube for years and years. So he's got like millions of views, and I think over 1 million subs. He's really pretty too, which helps draw the eye. But I enjoy his workout routines, and it's very well produced. The production value is very high. He clearly has a very good team behind him.
Okay.
But I definitely enjoy his work, and he has really good stretching routines, good advice on working out and healthy eating and stuff. I don't really need help with diet or at all, but I'm just trying to like get back in shape. I've been kind of a lazy person for the last year. 2019 was just a very lazy year for me, so I'm trying to make 2020 not be lazy.
That sounds like a good idea. I shall join you.
It's good. I was thinking in the shower today, real men work out.
Okay. I'm just tuning in. Please, Brently, please tell us, who are you? What are you?
Well, what am I? I'm very weird. I have a lot of opinions about all kinds of things. I have a YouTube channel that's called It's Brently, and I just kind of talk about different issues that kind of come across my radar, usually on Twitter, but also things that are like of large social import. I got started, I think, talking about Julian Assange, and a lot of the gender bending mania that we've seen. I got really upset when I saw Desmond is Amazing coming to popularity and notoriety, and almost universally the media was sort of uncritically cheerleading this sort of drag child behavior, which really upset me because here's like a small boy, and little kids, they don't know anything. They're kind of like these little fairies that will just do whatever they need to do in order to get attention from their parents. And in Desmond's videos and stuff, you can see very easily that he talks about how he got exposed to RuPaul's Drag Race when he was 2 years old. I don't know what most parents think. I don't know what you think, but I don't think that content is really appropriate for small children because it's a lot of complicated stuff, and it's drag to me is adult behavior. And it's not something that can be easily explained to a 2-year-old child, so it's not really appropriate for them. So when I saw him starting to do a bunch of gender bending and then showing up on ABC, Good Morning America, in the newspapers and stuff, and going to Pride, it really threw me for a loop. And then I found out there were other drag children. There was another one, Queen Lactatia. He's from Montreal, and there was quite a scandalous cover featured in Huck magazine, I believe it was, which I think is a UK or maybe it's a Canadian publication, I'm not sure. But they photographed Lactatia in very like almost like very sexual poses. There's the main picture was, he's in fishnet stockings and this little high-cut dress with his legs spread on a couch. He's got makeup on and a wig, and he's looking at the camera seductively, and it's just not appropriate, and it really creeps me out. So I couldn't keep my peace, and I had to speak about it.
Yeah, so this is Desmond is amazing, but how old is this Desmond guy?
Desmond is now 11 or 12.
Oh, right, so he's a little kid.
Yes.
Okay.
And I mean, I don't want to say anything horrible about him himself. I think he's just, doing what he feels that he loves. And of course he loves it because, he gets a lot of attention for it. And that's,
okay.
Children are just these little attention sponges. They need attention in order to grow, in order to feel like, they're being included in the family system. And children should be given attention for whatever they're interested in. It's just my problem really comes to when it comes outside the home and it begins to be publicized and cheerleaded and endorsed, and not really. It doesn't seem like a whole lot of thought is given to it. His mother had him on a podcast, now defunct podcast, of Michael Alig, who I'm not sure if you're familiar with Michael Alig, but he was convicted of murder in the late 80s, early 90s of his roommate / drug dealer over a drug bust gone wrong. So this guy was convicted of murder. What they said he had done was he killed the guy, he chopped the guy up into little bit of pieces, put him in a bathtub with some bleach because he thought that would get rid of the body, and eventually he was caught and sent to jail. And then, he served his time, and then he came out, and he started this podcast, and, Desmond ended up on this podcast with a convicted murderer, and I was just like, clearly his mother is not thinking very clearly, or she just, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a child, and I would not let my child on a podcast with a convicted murderer, and she's a self-described club kid, so maybe she did one too many e-pills in the 90s, who knows. But yeah, that was one of the first things that really got me going. And then the other thing that I started talking about was the situation with Julian Assange.
Okay. Yeah, that's one I care about a lot. I suppose, he's just a very interesting character and has worked very hard throughout his life, really, to expose the truth. And I think, now he's in England now, but of course they're still trying to extradite him, I believe. I don't know, I don't keep track, but
they have him in Belmarsh prison, which I believe is outside of London, and he has a extradition hearing coming up February 20th, I think.
Yeah, okay. It's good. I like you, well informed.
Twitter.
Yeah, right. I'd like to speak to someone about that. I don't know what we can do about it, though.
Make noise. That's about it. I mean, it's the other thing. Like, what do we do? Like, I made a large banner and I hung it outside my window in my apartment here. That said, "Free Julian, free Chelsea," because they have Chelsea Manning, of course, locked up as well. She's refusing to participate in this new round of prosecution against him, and so they've had her locked up, I believe, since April, on obstruction charges or some such nonsense, because she won't testify again against him. Okay. She just won't do it. And she said that you can keep me in here as long as you're going. And now they're threatening. They've been charging her $1,000 a day in like fines as an added bonus to keeping her locked up every single day. So it's, it really goes to show who's in charge here. It's like we got the two truth tellers and whistleblowers are in jail. Meanwhile, we have war criminals like, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton, all walking around free, not even, there's not even a hint in the mainstream media or in the organs of justice that these folks would ever be charged for the war crimes that they're obviously guilty of. So it's like, what do we do? We just make a lot of noise. We keep talking, we keep networking, keep making videos, spreading the word. And hopefully, hopefully one day we'll reach a sort of critical amount of, people that are aware of the situation and pissed off enough that they can't continue to get away with treating these people, like that. But we'll have to wait and see. It's an ongoing process. My sister's fond of saying the struggle is real.
Yeah.
Popular saying among the youth.
Okay, the struggle is real. Yeah, that's... Well, it's good. It's good. I like that to realify. That's a stupid word I've made up. The struggle is real. I think it's very easy sometimes for us, or lots of people really, to just see it all really as a kind of game and that's not really real. The impact, because it's out of our immediate vicinity, we don't really know the pain and suffering that people are going through. We just kind of see little news bites and sound bites and things. So I think, yeah, I like the struggle is real, but how to actually feel it, a different thing.
Yeah, well, that's why, living in New York City, you certainly see it. You see homeless people every day on the streets. You see mental illness all the time in the subway. You see it on people's faces. You see, like, I could walk down the street sometimes and I can tell that there are some women I pass and they're on the verge of tears. And I see some dudes whose eyes are just so far away that you can tell that something is really, really, like, troubling them. And, it's just... You see it. It's there. It's there every day, and we're all, I'm not like super wealthy. I'm able to maintain substance levels and or subsistence. I think that's the word. But it's a struggle. We have to get out there every day and work hard and work towards a brighter future, and we have to make little sacrifices in our time, in order to put ourselves into a better position.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. So I saw a video you put out quite recently. Oh yeah, I'm just because there's been a few and I caught a few. There was this was about Kevin Spacey, and I did love the title of it. Yeah, we need to talk about Kevin. I think is that right?
Well, I said we need to talk about Kevin Spacey, and I used the movie poster with the movie We Need to Talk About Kevin, who, if anybody's not familiar with that movie, they should totally see it. Tilda Swinton stars as the main protagonist, and it's sort of this non-linear story about the mother of a child who is severely disturbed, probably a psychopath. And it shows you the struggle that she goes through as a mother, and it's really heartbreaking and harrowing, and it's very real. It feels like a real story.
Okay.
So it's definitely one I recommended, and the fact that we're talking about a psychopath, that's why I used it to reference Kevin Spacey, because anybody who's familiar with House of Cards and Frank Underwood, which is the character Kevin Spacey has been portraying in these little Christmas video releases, Frank Underwood is very much a psychopath. He's very cunning, very manipulative, cold, callous, charming, charismatic, and he has no conscience, and he'll do whatever needs to be done in order to accomplish his goals. And so that kind of struck me, and this weird blending of Kevin Spacey the person with Kevin Spacey's character Frank Underwood, and the fact that Kevin Spacey the person in real life has had all these sexual assault allegations directed at him, or also not just sexual assault but also like just sexual advances that were unwarranted or inappropriate, and that he thought he could get away with because of the gravitas of who he was, and all that. It struck me then when I started to hear that not one, not two, but three of the people who have accused him of wrongdoing all perished in 2019. One was an accident, one was cancer, and the other was a suicide. And I just find the timing and the close proximity. I mean, sure, it could just be a coincidence. I have to throw that out there up front. But I don't really believe in coincidences anymore. I've been around for 37 years. And, when you get a feeling that something is off, generally, you should listen to that feeling, you should look further into that feeling, and you should investigate. And that's what I did. So I just made that 7-minute video just kind of going over briefly the people that had died and how they died, and just mentioning how creepy Kevin Spacey's videos were. The last one that he put out was this one. It was called KTWK, which we believe stands for Kill Them With Kindness, because that's sort of how he ends the video. And he talks about how if somebody somebody comes after you, you could respond in kind, you could go on the attack, but you can also hold your fire. And then he pauses and he's like, you can kill them with kindness. And that's how he ends, and it's super fucking creepy.
That is creepy, yeah.
I just have to, he has to have some iota of self-awareness, so I don't know, it was just upsetting. I made a video about it.
Yeah.
I find my videos to be sort of like a cathartic release this tension that I have about these weird situations that kind of pop up in reality.
Yeah, it's good. Always liked the film Swimming with Sharks.
I don't think I've seen it.
Really?
Yeah, no, it's called Swimming with Sharks.
Yeah. I love hearing the sound of you tapping on your keyboard. Yeah.
Oh, 1994.
Yeah. It was, I suppose what I liked about it, it was early spacey, I guess, but at the time I was working in publishing and I was doing a difficult job selling advertising space, and it was a hard job, but I quite enjoyed it, but I just had my sneaking suspicions that my boss was quite psychopathic. There was something quite wrong with him. He was quite good at what he did, but I didn't feel right about it. And I remember watching this film, Swimming with Sharks, and towards the end, and I think I actually said to my boss, yeah, you should watch Swimming with Sharks, I think you're in it. Because it was my point of saying to him, I want to kill you, because I think that's basically what happens in the film. The young guy comes on board to learn the ropes and ends up, I think, kidnapping the boss and then trying to kill him or something. I can't remember. I think I'll have to watch it again. But
wow.
Yeah, it was just one I remember. And yeah, I think it's upsetting. I think for a lot of people, they don't really want to think that their movie stars are actually really quite crooked and really quite sick and really quite evil. I think it's, and I guess there's a cover-up, a lot of cover-up with these things. I don't know. Have you found that or?
Well, to me it seems like there is. If we look at the Harvey Weinstein situation, for example, here's a guy for years and years and years. People knew he was a creep. People knew he was, using his power and position at, the picture company in order to, coerce young ladies in order to engage in sexual acts with him. And, it was covered up and it wasn't spoken of for years and years and years. Mm. So it's not a stretch to imagine that, there's a lot more going on, underneath the surface or behind, closed doors than what we get exposed to here out in the public. And that's kind of, Hollywood has an entire branch called PR. They have PR people that handle all the sort of relations with the public about, this information. And if we look at another situation is the Jussie Smollett case. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was this actor he was a African-American homosexual actor on this show called Empire on the BET, which is the Black Entertainment Television channel. And he faked a hate crime against himself back in early 2019 and basically got away with it. The police investigated the crime as it was a real crime, and they did their job a little too well. And they found these two, I believe they were Nigerian or Ethiopian trainers. They're they were actual workout trainers that Jussie had hired to pump up before his role. Mm-hmm. And he paid them thousands of dollars to mock beat him up one night, and the police found them and interviewed them and then released them, and they then turned their investigation onto him. And curiously, the prosecution dropped the case and sort of dismissed the whole thing, and it went away. But, a lot of people found that to be distasteful and unacceptable and clear case of corruption. And so now the prosecutor herself is under fire. She just lawyered up. I just watched one of Tim Pool's recent videos on the situation. And so hopefully, and a judge also granted a search warrant against Jussie. So they are going to have a year's worth of all his Google information. So all of his location data, all of his emails, all of his search history. So if he searched for the location of a of a hardware store, for example, where they bought the rope that they put around his neck, they had a fake noose that they put in. So if they find that, they're going to have some pretty clear evidence that he faked this thing, and I think he's going to go down for it. But it just goes to show, like, these people aren't beyond, manufacturing BS for mass consumption. And if that's like this one dude in Hollywood, you have to imagine that, the real powers that be, the real, billionaires and oligarchs that are sort of like, running things from behind the scenes, those people are definitely capable of much more complicated and much more elaborate, illusions or narratives that they manufacture and pump out via the mainstream media. So I go back to X-Files every time. I remember that if you watched X-Files in the beginning, or throughout the series, they always had the intro tune, and then at the end it would say the truth is out there. And towards the end of the series, they started to change that up, and they would say question everything. And another one was trust no one. So I got those stuck in my brain when I was 12, 13 years old, and they never left. So I definitely, I kind of resonate with those things. And I think it's very important to question everything, especially when the powers that be are proffering justifications for war. Which in recent days, this whole Iran situation, which I don't know if you want to get into that or not, but.
Maybe not right now, I think, but yeah, I can see it's just one of those things. It's been going on a long time, but it's just the media tends to repeat, essentially all the same blurb.
Yeah,
it's
very tricky.
Yeah, and what about Epstein?
Oh, Jeffrey. I had a bunch of videos on him. I find his situation to be the most recent or contemporary example of this sort of I call them the satanic billionaire pedophiles club, because I don't know what else to call these people. But
Wait, maybe something a bit shorter.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's it's a work in progress. It's hard to expose these motherfuckers. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse or not. I'll try to keep the F-bombs to a minimum.
It's fine.
Oh, okay. But years and years ago, I was on spent a lot of time on the Cassiopeia forum, and we got they were talking about these books. Then one of the books was The Franklin Scandal by Nick Bryant. And this was a deep dive investigative report by a real journalist in the 80s, covering the story of a few orphan children who were trafficked to the rich and powerful in Omaha, Nebraska. And it all eventually sort of came out because it turned out that the guy running the child trafficking ring was this guy, Lawrence or Larry King. He was a African-American gentleman who was at the top of the Franklin Credit Union, which is where the namesake comes from, the Franklin scandal. And it was eventually revealed that he was using this credit union as his own personal piggy bank. And so he eventually went down for that. But during the course of that investigation, all this information about child trafficking came up. He was connected to a major businessman. I can't remember the guy's name at the time. In the area. Also, the police chief of Omaha was regularly abusing this one girl, and the entire thing about the child abuse was all covered up. Larry King went away for his financial crimes, And if I'm remembering correctly, he was murdered in jail. I'm not too sure about that, but that was just one. That was the first time I came across this sort of idea that there was a certain number of the elite that were engaged in trafficking children for the purposes of pedophilia and also satanic ritual abuse. In the book, Bryant also goes into some stories by these victims where they talk about participating in ritual murders. Some kids were trafficked to ranches, somewhere out in the Midwest, and they would release a certain number of them nude in the wild, and then they would hunt them down and kill them and rape them and do Lord knows what. And again, it was just a story until you hear about something called the Dutroux Affair. And the Dutroux Affair was an event in Belgium. This guy, Marc Dutroux, was sort of fulfilling the same role as Larry King was in Omaha, Nebraska. He was trafficking children. He had children locked up in his basement. The local police department was aiding and abetting and preventing a real investigation into his crimes. And he was also murdered, I think, before anything real came out. And so it's now all faded. It's sort of faded into this realm of nebulous history, conspiracy theory, the CIA's favorite invented slur to discredit anybody who talks about things they don't want to talk about. And you can't, like, if people listening, if you don't believe me, go Google CIA invented conspiracy theory and look up the article on Zero Hedge. He goes into the history about how a declassified paper in the 1970s shows that in 1967, the CIA issued a memo where they conjured the term conspiracy theory and they put it out there into their mockingbirds or their contacts and assets in the media in order to discredit anybody who was questioning the official narratives on major events like the Vietnam War or anything else. And so that's pretty much established fact that they invented this term conspiracy theory in order to discredit people. And you'll see even today, alternative journalists, Tim Pool's work I love. But, anytime anything gets a little conspiratorial or a little too shady, if he can't prove it 100% because, all the evidence is laid out before him, he'll just sort of dismiss it as, conspiracy theory. And, I find conspiracy theory not to be the abnormal, not to be like irrational or unacceptable, but to be more rather the norm. Like if you look at the history of humanity. But anyway, I'm getting far from Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein. That's all a premise to get into Epstein. Epstein is just the latest iteration. I'm calling this situation the Epstein Affair because Jeffrey Epstein, we all know, was trafficking young children to wealthy business people, wealthy, elite, including Prince Andrew, and others, Bill Clinton. And we have a lot of evidence that shows his connections to intelligence agencies. That was one of the reasons he wasn't heavily prosecuted in the early 2000s. The first time he was arrested was because the prosecution was told specifically he belonged to intelligence. Yeah. And that quote is available. People can look that up. I also highly recommend Whitney Webb's Too Big to Fail series. She did an amazing deep dive investigative report. It could easily be turned into a short book, pages and pages and pages of connections between Epstein. She goes deep into his history, all the billionaires that were backing him, people like Leslie Wexner and Sheldon Adelson that are very well connected, very wealthy Zionists. Are you getting the yeah, it's New York. Yeah. I live a block away from a hospital, so occasionally it happens. But she does an amazing work in her investigative report going into all the facts and details and shows conclusively that he was working for the Mossad. And there's an ex-Mossad guy, this guy, Ari Ben Menashe, that she interviewed directly, who comes out and says, yes, he was working with Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, in the 80s. He was eventually tasked with procuring this sort of sexual blackmail. And so what he would do is he would traffic young children to, wealthy elites, maybe on his island or at any of his properties in Manhattan. He had at least 2 or 3, I believe, houses in Manhattan. And he would traffic them and then record the interaction. And then, he would have his handlers, if whether it was Mossad or the American CIA, or even if there's a distinguishable difference between those two, I don't really know. But anyway, if that's probably what he was doing, which is why this whole situation was sort of covered up and basically made to go away. And then along comes, finally they catch him again because all of his victims have grown up and now they've found their voices and they're willing to speak out. And he goes to jail again, and then he's murdered in jail or suicided in jail. And the number of things about the suicide, nothing makes any sense. Like, the official story is so full of holes. It's even more ludicrous to believe that he actually killed himself than it is to believe that somebody killed him in order to cover up crimes of others. So that's why I talk about him pretty regularly on my channel. It's also, people are interested. The Epstein didn't kill himself hashtag has been up and down on Twitter's trending lists all over the time. Bombshells keep coming out. Every 3-4 weeks, there's a new development in the story. The most recent development, which I covered in my most recent video from yesterday, was somebody leaked autopsy pictures from Epstein.
Yeah, okay.
And also pictures from his cell after he was murdered. And one of the standards that we have in the prison system here in America is that if somebody dies while in custody, the body isn't removed, it's not touched. Everything is photographed and documented before that happens so that everybody can make sure that proper procedure is followed. And that didn't happen here. There's no pictures of his body in the cell. They moved him immediately. And it's all very shady. The pictures show, there was one picture that shows the alleged noose that was used, that he used to kill himself. The way that they described that he killed himself, it doesn't make any sense. They said that he had torn strips from his bedding, these orange sheets. These sheets are very light. They're very easy. You can tear them apart, just with your physical strength. Mm-hmm. And so allegedly what he did was that he tore a strip off, tied it around his neck, and then tied it to the bedpost, and then leaned forward on his knees and choked himself to death. And I just can't fathom how anybody could kill themselves like that. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, your survival instincts will kick in. You're not going to be able to choke yourself to death. And when you look at the autopsy photo, there's a clear picture of his neck, and you can see quite clearly ligature marks, which are bruising from force. And the mark is very thin, so it looks almost like somebody took a wire or something and used it to kill him, and then they just tore up a noose and left it there, in the cell as evidence or whatever.
Okay, you say that was images of the actual autopsy.
There were some pictures that nothing from the autopsy really, but they were pictures that were in the autopsy photo collection. So you can see one picture of him. There's one picture of him, his post-mortem. There's and a bunch of pictures from his cell. And there isn't that many pictures of him, really.
I suppose I'm just asking, is he actually dead?
We don't know. I mean, I suppose it is possible they were able to find somebody who looked enough like him that they could swap him out. But it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he's dead or alive. I don't think it does. Because if he is alive, they've probably already done, a number to change his appearance, and they've probably given him a new identity or whatever. And really, it's more, at this point, he's become more of a symbol for the Satanic Billionaire Pedophiles Club and what they are able to do, the amount of power and influence they have, especially in the organs of justice and in the media. Because we'll note that the mainstream media doesn't like to talk about this story. They like to keep it hush-hush. There was a Project Veritas release, which showed a NBC reporter, Amy Robach. She was so frustrated because she had this story 3 or 4 years ago. And she interviewed Virginia Guffrey, who was the alleged victim of Prince Andrew. And she went on the record with Amy Robach. And they did a whole investigative series. And then NBC, went into it. They had her do all the investigation. And then when it came time to air the story, they pulled the plug. And their justifications for it were really loose. And if you watch this Project Veritas video with Amy Robach, she's clearly frustrated, and so it was a hot mic. It was like a leaked video that somebody had, it was a moment where the camera was running, but they weren't actually broadcasting. And so somebody had access to that footage, and they leaked it to Project Veritas, and then Project Veritas put it up on the internet, and that was like another bombshell in the story. So it keeps going, it keeps developing. I think they're going to air. I don't know if it's happened recently, or I know that they're airing it soon. So it'll be curious to watch it and see what they do go into and what they don't, because now I feel like they have to do damage control. They have to give some sort of limited hangout, because people keep talking about it. People aren't letting this one go. The Franklin scandal and the Trudeau affair, that all went away, but the Epstein affair, it's still hot business.
Yeah, I do like the just those occasional interviews you see on NBC or some of the whatever those media are, and just for no reason he's talking. I think this guy's talking about a dog or something, his dog handler, and then he says at the end, "Oh, and Epstein didn't kill himself." I don't know. It just kind of makes me laugh. That kind of really random throwing something in when it's really not expected. So
it's the art of comedy.
And also Ricky Gervais at the Golden Globes. That was very interesting what he said. I thought I saw some of the extracts.
Yeah, there's he had a 7-minute introductory monologue or little speech. And there's an interesting, I don't know if you're familiar with Ghost Body Language. She is this woman who does these body language analyses on YouTube. And so anytime there's a major happening where somebody gives a speech or a presentation, I found her back in the day when Brett Kavanaugh was being confirmed, and she did an analysis of the body language of both Brett Kavanaugh and Christine, I can't remember her last name, his accuser anyway. And I've been following her ever since, but she did an interesting analysis on Ricky Gervais's little speech. And she also, kind of like they cut to the people in the audience, and she, points out, who's actually genuinely having a good time and who's sort of putting on this like acting like laugh, like they know more about what he's saying. And the fact that he got the pedophile thing in there, he got talking about the Catholic Church, and a lot of people are sort of, I've seen on the internet, there's people there are two ways about it. Either people are, hooting and hollering and think it's the best thing since sliced bread. And then there are other people that are a little more skeptical, that are saying that this, his speech was probably pre-approved, that the powers that be at the Globe, at the Golden Globe Awards knew he was going to say something along those lines. And that it was all sort of already understood, and that they may have even told some of the actors that they were going to cut to them at certain parts of the segment, because we have to remember that the Golden Globes, it's a production, it's a show, it's an advertisement. So to just watch it and to sort of naively accept that what we're seeing is what it appears to be is naive. It's not necessarily the truth. So these people are more of the mind that, he's giving sort of a limited hangout and using humor to sort of like progress the narrative in a certain way. But again, it was so immensely popular and became such a viral sensation on the internet that I think they may have bit off a little bit more than they can chew, and they didn't really understand what they were doing. So, but I loved his speech. I loved it when he was just, he said something about, made a pedophile reference, and then said, it's like, I know you're all friends with Jeffrey Epstein. And then the audience was like, oh, grumble, grumble, grumble. It's like, I don't care. This is my last time. I don't care. But I liked his speech. I thought he was very funny. He's a very good comedian. I have to give him mad props for putting so much, getting that little dig in there and then having it go viral. Because that's how these things will eventually come out. It's how we will eventually expose the Satanic Billionaires Pedophile Club. It's by talking about it and spreading awareness of them. Because they've just existed in the shadows for so long because the internet wasn't there. But now that the internet's here, and we've got YouTube, and we've got, Twitter, and they can't hide things anymore. When they had a few centralized sources of information, it was much easier for them to control narratives. And they had their couple of channels on TV and their cable news shows. That's how everybody got their news. They would get it from cable news or the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian, whatever. But now there's so much more freedom of information. We are all potential journalists. We all have little cell phones with cameras and internet access in our pockets. Any one of us can record a video at any time and put it on the internet. And so it's near impossible to contain the information like it was in the past. So they have to come up with more advanced methods.
Yeah, wow. Just wow, Brently. This has been fantastic. I think we'll wrap it up now, but yeah, definitely want to chat to you again if you would like to. And what is there anything, I suppose it's a silly question, what are you going to be working on? Or is there anything coming up soon? Or I don't know, have you got any thoughts or...
Well, I've been going to open mics in New York City. I'm trying.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I went to my fourth one yesterday, and I'm going to try to get to another one today before work. And so I'm trying to make a career out of it. Like, that's going to be my new shtick. I'm going to try to be a stand-up comedian.
Oh, wow.
I've been inspired by Joe Rogan and others.
Yeah. I love Joe Rogan. Yeah.
Oh, I listen to his show all the time, walking. And anytime I'm walking in the city, I have him plugged into my ears, and I find his show fascinating. I love his humor. I love his guests. I'm not so interested in the fight stuff that he does, but like that's fine.
Yeah. Oh, it's because you're a wuss.
Yeah, exactly. I love hearing him talk to other comedians. And so, hearing him talking to other comedians really inspired me. And one day I would love to be on his show. So that's how I get there, is by being funny. And the only way to be funny is to, try repeatedly and fail until you're good.
Yeah. And yeah, I love a go myself. Well, I kind of had traded the boards very loosely 10 years ago. I think I did have a go over in Wiltshire. I tried a few times, and yeah, I found it very, very difficult because with comedy, of course, you have to be funny. But I think some of the topics you've talked about, trying to actually make those funny when you're dealing with really the most lowest of the despicable, can't even say the word, but the most grottiest of human behaviour, and trying to make that sound funny, very, very difficult. But yeah, I wouldn't mind having to go myself. We should do a double act.
Definitely a challenge. It is definitely a challenge. There's a lot of writing, a lot of practice, a lot of tweaking, and then you have to take it into the lab, which is going to the open mic and then testing it out. And you have to be, you have to get up on stage in front of other comedians and then drop your lines and hope that they land. And if they don't, you have to be like, well, okay. And you just have to take it in stride and move on, because it's a really good way to chip away at your self-importance and your sort of like insecurities, and it's a really good way to find your voice and get comfortable speaking about difficult things. So I've been really enjoying it. I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I would love to see how you get on, if you do any recordings of that. And
not yet. Still all very rough. I can tell you one of my Epstein jokes, but it's quite dirty.
Let's save it for another time then.
Okay.
Actually, go on then.
You want to hear it? All right. So one of my Jeff. So this is I was friends with Jeff, actually. I knew him very well. I spent a lot of time with him. Guy was a total creep, but one thing about him was that he could get you some really tight pussy, really fresh, if you know what I mean.
Oh, dude. I think you're breaking up.
Yeah, like I said, it's nasty.
Goodness.
I haven't actually. You're the first person I've tried that one on cold. I haven't taken that one to the lab yet.
I think. Oh yeah, that work better at the club with an audience. I think that'll work. Yeah.
Well, comedians are generally a little bit more dirty-minded.
Yeah, that's true. And how can people keep up with you, follow you, or what would you recommend? How can they find out the work you're doing?
You can totally follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Sire2067. It's at CYRE2067. And my YouTube channel is It's Brently. And you can just, if there's an apostrophe, it's IT''S space Brently, BRENTLY. And it's a picture of me with a little black dog. So that's my dog Radar. He's my little guy.
Okay.
And that's where I'm at.
Okay. Well, no, that's fantastic. Please, can you email me some of the links that you'd mentioned, or that I could put in the show notes at the bottom of this podcast?
Oh yeah, totally, no problem.
I'll find your email address. Oh yes, no, don't worry, we'll sort that out. Yeah, and that's how it sounds great.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me. It was a lot of fun.
You're welcome. Yeah, no, cheers. Enjoy the rest of your day.
I will.
Yeah, cheers, Brent.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And now it's time for some hilarious comedy on Everyman Radio.
Hello, and welcome to the Techno Gadget Boss Show with your host, Mr. Techno Gadget Boar.
Hello. I'm Mr. Techno Gadget Boar. And today I'm going to be unboxing a color print cartridge for my HP DeskJet F4 200. I stumbled there because this cartridge is compatible with a number of different HP DeskJets.
Here you can see me looking on eBay for the print cartridge. I'm logged in as Mr. Techno Gadget Boar.
As you can see, it came to me in a jiffy bag. More about that later. Let's have a look what's in the box. And yeah, as you can see, it didn't come with any bubble wrap apart from that on the jiffy bag. But let's have a look inside the box. As you can see, it's already opened to save time. And here it is, the wonderful ink cartridge. It has some bits on and some bits to go in the printer. Let's have a look what's in the box. Ah yes, and there's some instructions. That's something hanging off there. That's just the usual things that we need to know about our new ink cartridge. But hold on, what does it say at the bottom? In case of any issues running nozzle cleaner, contact the customer service department for the company where you purchased the cartridge. And Epstein didn't kill himself. Oh, that's very interesting. I'll put that away later while I install my new cartridge in my printer so I can print in glorious color.
It's the last time, who cares? Oh. Many talented people of colour were snubbed in major categories. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. The Hollywood foreign press are all very, very racist. So, but you all look lovely, all dolled up. You came here in your limos. I came here in a limo tonight, and the licence plate was made by Felicity Huffman. So, no. Shush. Once upon a time in Hollywood, nearly 3 hours long, Leonardo DiCaprio attended the premiere, and by the end, his date was too old for him. So... Even Prince Andrew's like, come on, Leo, mate, you know. You're nearly 50, son. Lots of big celebrities here tonight. I mean, legends, icons, yeah? Look, at this table alone, Al Pacino, Robert De Niro. But... Baby Yoda. Oh, that's Joe Pesci, sorry. It was a big year for paedophile movies. Surviving R. Kelly, Leaving Neverland, Two Popes. Shut up. Shut up. I don't care. I don't care. You could binge watch the entire first season of Afterlife instead of watching this show. That's a show about a man who wants to kill himself because his wife dies of cancer, and it's still more fun than this, okay? Spoiler alert, season 2 is on the way, so in the end, he obviously didn't kill himself, just like Jeffrey Epstein. Shut up. I know he's your friend, but I don't care. You had to make your own way here in your own plane, didn't you? The world got to see James Corden as a fat pussy. He was also in the movie Cats, but no one saw that. Apple roared into the TV game with a morning show, a superb drama, yeah. A superb drama about the importance of dignity and doing the right thing, made by a company that runs sweatshops in China. So, well, you say you're woke, but the companies you work for, I mean, unbelievable. Apple, Amazon, Disney. If ISIS started a streaming service, you'd call your agent, wouldn't you? So, if you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. So, if you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God, and... So... It's already 3 hours long. It's the last time, who cares?
New music.
Whether it's for better or for the worse, as long as we're together, we'll make it through this. I knew that it was true from the very first time I kissed your lips. I know every day is a new adventure, and sometimes you may feel like giving up, but you just gotta look back and remember what we're made of. I'll stay by your side when storms are raging. I will hold you close tonight, and I won't let go until the morning light. I'll stay by your side. There's so much more to you than what meets the eye, a beauty that goes deeper than the surface. I've waited my whole life to find someone who gives love a purpose. I'll stay by your side when storms are raging. I will hold you close tonight, and I won't let go until the morning light. Oh, I'll stay by your side. I won't let go, I won't let go. until the morning rise. Oh, I'll stay by your side.
Thank you for listening to Everyman Radio. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with your friends on social media.
Goodbye.